Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
From speakers to speaker circuits to online to radio, we need stronger pro-democracy movements.
Hey, Jefferson, this is Mark Taylor-Canfield from Democracy Watch News. And you're speaking my language because this is exactly the kind of topics that we've been discussing at Democracy Watch News. And also, and so I have a quick report on our election for mayor, which involves some of those very same issues you just mentioned. But I also wanted to let people know that on November 21st and 22nd, there will be nationwide protests by artists against the Trump regime's attempts to stifle freedom of speech. And you can go to falloffreedom.com for that. So artists, galleries, libraries, concert halls, and other arts venues all across the country will be participating. And as an artist and musician myself, I think that's very important. But what just happened here in Seattle is exactly what you were talking about. So we have a democracy voucher program in Seattle that the voters approved. It's publicly financed, and every registered voter gets $100. You can divide that into $25 segments, and so you could potentially donate to 4 different candidates in our city elections. Our city elections are nonpartisan to begin with, but we just elected a Democratic Socialist mayor, and her name is Katie Wilson. She's the former executive director for the Transit Writers Union. She's never held elected office before. The incumbent, her opposition in this race, Mayor Bruce Harrell, outspent her 5-1. But she used her democracy vouchers to run her campaign. And although the final vote was really close, it took over a week for them to actually, for her to declare her victory, which was just the other day. But her election has also been compared to Mamdani's election in New York City. And I think it's very surprising to the political pundits, considering that he outspent her by so much and that he is an incumbent with a big support from corporate entities in this city. And it's a pretty amazing story. She gave me, Mayor-elect Katie Wilson gave me an exclusive interview on election night, which I thought was really telling, Jefferson, because she made the corporate media wait, knowing that I was with a nonprofit news organization. So she preferred to speak to me, which was wonderful. So thank you for that. But she very much similar themes to Mamdani, populist themes of affordable housing, mass transit, etc. And I think it's a strong statement, when she says her campaign wants land and wealth stewardship by the community, not by corporations. That's a very strong statement in the city where huge corporations like Amazon,
some of the biggest in the world,
have always had, a huge influence on local politics. So here we go. We have a Democratic Socialist for mayor. It's a new day in Seattle, and a lot of people are really excited. And she told me herself in our interview that she considers this a new pro-democracy movement. And she also mentioned Mamdani's election as another example of that. So some people, at least, are getting really involved. There is a big pushback against the Trump regime and his authoritarianism.
So, Mark, let me ask.
Mamdani and Katie Wilson are great examples of that. So keep up the work, all you people out there working with independence and
so Mark, I'm going to interject. I'm going to interject. Yes. And so thank you for that. If she'd be down, I'm saying this also to Sean, she might be somebody interesting to interview next week. And if you had contact information or want to contact the show, that might be interesting to talk about, and it might be interesting to talk with her. But the thing I will say, and this I just got to say, to everybody who's an indivisible chapter, everybody who's a precinct person, everybody's looking for something in their local community, that there really is a chance in cities around the country, not every city, not every town, but a bunch of cities and a bunch of towns to pass publicly funded elections. You can do it voucher style like Seattle, or you can do small donor matching like New York. There's a couple different models. They both have reasons to recommend them, and you give a chance for new candidates to emerge.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Donald Trump lost, voter suppression won in 2024. That's the headline over at HartmannReport.com, and just a brilliant article written by Greg Palast exclusively for the Hartmann Report. He writes, Trump lost. That is, if all legal voters were allowed to vote, if all legal ballots were counted, Trump would have lost the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Vice President Kamala Harris would have won the presidency with 286 electoral votes. And if not for the mass purge of voters of color, if not for the mass disqualification of provisional and mail-in ballots, if not for the new mass vigilante challenges in swing states, Harris would have gained at least another 3.5 million votes, topping Trump's popular vote tally by 1.2 million. Greg brings us the numbers. He lays it out. You can read it over at hartmanreport.com, absolutely free. It's titled Trump Lost, Vote Suppression Won at hartmanreport.com. Check it out.
The people who support this program. What I have been hearing about how do we build strength in a pro-democracy movement? How does that therefore give more wind at the backs of pro-social, pro-democracy, pro sort of baseline morality Democrats in partisan races and others in nonpartisan races? We had really good thoughts from a caller about how that connects to money in politics. It's not the whole story, but it's a big part of the story. And over the break, we had an interesting conversation about the mayor's race in Seattle, which also the upstart underdog candidate in Seattle won also with the benefit of publicly financed elections. And I'm telling you, folks, if you're looking for something to work on, this is something that can be won. You go to Congress, you don't got a chance, right? I'm saying someday maybe, but not this Congress and not this Supreme Court, not this presidency. But you go to a town, and not just like Seattle and not just like New York. You do it in Madison. You do it in lots of towns. Maybe some of the Yoopers could get it done. There are towns around, there are cities around this country that absolutely could pass a public funding match or a voucher system for your elections. Now, this has some real advantages. For one thing, you start allowing for new voices to get in. It also helps provide sort of like a foundation funding stream for new organizing, for new candidates, to help build, to help sort of compete with this morass of secret money that is drowning our democracy. And we have a chance for the people's money to help it compete a little bit. It also means, and here, the subject is sort of, I brought up Tony Coelho, our caller brought up Bill Clinton. And very often we think about sort of the big fights, things like universal health care versus public option versus Obamacare versus just let everybody die, okay? And there's a range. We know that fight. We know the fight on abortion, right? There's big fights that get big attention. But what the pernicious effect of imbalanced money buying off politicians and is in things you don't pay as much attention to. Things like a Telecommunications Act, which ends up being a big giveaway to media organizations. The kinds of stuff that isn't, maybe antitrust regulation, which will get more and more public awareness, but is the kind of thing that not everybody's paying attention to all the time. That it's those little things, those secret deals, the stuff that doesn't get everybody on social media talking about. That's where that's where the impact of financial and political favor trading is even more pernicious. So wherever you land on some of those big issues, you still don't want. And that's why when we did public financing in Portland, it passed. When we did campaign finance limits in Portland, we got it passed with 87%, 89% of the vote maybe. And that with significant majorities of Republicans. Most people don't want their politicians to be bought and paid for. The people who do want it are the people who benefit from that. But that's not most human beings in this country. So I appreciate that topic. It's not the whole answer, but it's a big part of the